So after integrating Inertia.js with Cake and Bootstrap UI plugin and just making it all work together, we're now at the stage where we want to start developing our table, index table view, sortable headings, all the things that we're going to need to make a Inertia enabled front end, and using CakePHP as the backend API, if you like. So to get started, we know we're heading for something that looks like this. So we're now going to start coding the index component. So I'll close our files here and we just go up to our assets directory. We know that the page that we're pulling in is called this one, the index page. We want to start with a JavaScript, React. So we want to start with creating a table. So let's do that firstly. So we've got so we want to create a table, and this table is going to be Bootstrap 5, and we've already got Bootstrap pulled in using our layouts, so we don't need to include it in React. And we're going to have a table head and a table body, and there's going to be a fair bit of work to do to get this all working. But let's start with our headings first. So we can create a component called headings. And in order to know what we need to do, we might just say, let's return here. And before we return, we might, maybe we can use our area to the side. So we want to see if we want to look at and inspect, we want to see these records here. So maybe what we can do is, in our layout, we have this ability, we might add some information here so that we can see it, but how do we get stuff from Inertia into our layout? Well, we can use this here. We can go const, and then we can dereference. So I want to take my shipments, and I want to use one of the layout.js. Let's see, go use page, here we go, use page. Now this is a handy little thing to get hold of the props that are being passed. So what we're going to do here, we're going to say, we know that that shipment is going to be it's going to be an array. So what I'm going to do is just go shipments 0, and before that's okay. So we've now just given ourselves the ability to look at the record that we're going to be pulling in through the front end. And we're not going to do every single field here, but let's just do shipper, destination, pallets and modified. I think last changed it will be. Okay, so we want shipper, destination, pallet count, and if we go down to modified, that'll give us everything. And just so that const headings, we're going to make a basically okay, get rid of all that, and now is that, so we've got here, we've got shipper, destination, pallets last change. So what we want to do is want to say, okay, shipment, destination, pallet counts, we call that pallets, and last updated. And we also want another, we want actions. And actions, and I want to say to that one, no sort. That will do, won't it? Alright, so we're going to map across this, and now we could all do this in probably a lot easier way, but we're going to call it the field is whatever that is, heading split split, and I want that 0, and then maybe we'll call that label, and sort is if there's something truthy there, then we want true, otherwise false. And now with this, we're going to want so we want to be able to keep track of, when we click on this, we want to keep track of the direction as well. So by default, direction is, I don't know, ascending by default. So that's our headings there. Now let's go export default and we now want to go through here, and we're going to basically give ourselves all our headings. So this is going to be a, so we're going to make, so we're going to return, so with our headings, want to map through them and return a table heading. Now with siblings, we always want to make a unique key. So we're going to use the field as the unique key for these table headings. And ultimately what we're going to want is some, it's interesting, I'm not pulling in, I wonder if it's because I'm not, it's like as if we've had a bit of an issue, or might need to reload the window or something. I don't know what's the cause of this, but okay, so I'm not sure. Normally I'd be able to, there we go, it's now pulling in things correctly. So what we're going to want to do, we're going to create a heading dot label. Now we could do this, we could say here, instead of doing that in the return statement, so if we say if heading dot sort, then it's just going to be, it's going to be a link component. But if it's not, how about we go let link equals that, and if it's not a sortable heading, let's make the link just equals heading dot label. Don't know if that's going to work, but we'll give it a shot. Okay, so we now need to go into our index and pull in our heading, and hopefully if this works we're golden. If it doesn't, well, how embarrassing. Dispatch is what we're after, isn't it? Okay, so now it's everything but the one we want. So let's find out why that happened. If there's something in those, let's make that sort. Let's make it obvious false true. Don't know if I've done that right, but we'll go here. That's better. Okay, so now we've got our headings, but we're missing something. If you have a look, it might be worth opening this in a new window. If we have a look here, we need to pass through our query string. So if there's now we need a query string to come through for all these links. So how do we do that? Well, let's give ourselves that functionality. So we've got our we've got our here, we might say let our search be equals a new, let's go URL, doesn't really matter, but if we go window.location.href, and we want to know what our current search is. So current search is now current search direction. We want to know that. So we want to know whether we're searching up or down at the moment. So we go search.search params and get whether we're sorting that might be by the current, we're looking at the current sort field is more correct. Now we want to make a decision, and we want to say that within each heading we want to say search params, and we want to set the sort field to be whatever heading dot field, and then we also want to set the direction to whatever the direction is. Now, does that work? And we need to pass through, if we're creating a link here, we need to pass that through here to our here, and we could just do that to, let's go search dot to string, see if that works. So that's search URL to string. Let's see what that's done. And so now when we hover, you can see that we've got every direction is always ascending. So now we need to get our fields toggling. So to do that, we have to do a little bit more work. We now need to make this component so it updates the sort direction every time we click it. So we need to sort out that, no pun intended. Now, one of the things that, if we have a look at our current view, is that every time we sort a different direction, you can see down here that it's changing a class to change the class to be ascending or descending. So we want to dynamically change classes. So let's do that. So one way we can do that is we use a product called, or an npm package called import class names, and we haven't installed that, so it's going to be npm install class names, and there we go. And what we're going to do now is going to create in our links here, we're going to add some class names, and I'm going to call it sort classes. Yeah, you can leave it like that. So we go, let the sort classes. So how we're going to specify this? So let the sort class equal class names and pass it an object. And whenever we ever want an ascending class, we want to say whatever's currently being sorted, current sort field is equals, if it equals the heading dot field and heading dot direction equals descending, and then so this is basically going to give us some sort classes. Let's see what has happened now with that. Let's reload. Okay, now that's pretty good. We've got when we click on something, we've got the arrows, but they're not toggling up and down, and we can't click it and make it go in the other direction yet, but we're getting close. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we need to now, every time we click on this link, we need to make a change to the state of a component. So we now need to put an on-click event here and call some sort of function here. So how do we do that? So we're going to have to do something there. Now, at the moment, we've got this headings being sent into our component, but we're going to make this into something state that we can update, because we need to be able to change direction from ascending to descending. So how do we do that? Well, we can use one of the React components. Let's do that. So we're going to put in const, and I'm going to call it state, because I'm going to use a special and dispatch. So this might be familiar if you've used Redux. It's like mini Redux, really. Use reducer. Now it's saying it needs a reducer function here, which we haven't created, and then I'm going to pass in the headings, these headings, to here as the initial value. So we've now got that. We now need to create a function which is called reducer, which is simply going to be, let's do it above here. So we go function reducer. Now the reducer function, if you've done Redux, takes the state, an action object, and then generally what you'll do is you'll have a switch statement, and you look inside the action object for a type, and then you'll say okay. Now the type we're going to create is the toggle action, and what it's going to do, it's going to get the state, go through it, for each element it's going to check if the element field equals the action, we'll call that field name, and if it does, we want to return whatever is currently in the element, but we're going to toggle the direction. So we're going to say direction equals near and descending, otherwise ascending. And otherwise, if we're not doing that, we want to return the element unchanged, unmutated. So now we might also put in a default, and well, we need a break statement there too for our, and by default, if yeah, we'll just leave it at that to just give us alright. So if we got enough, yeah, we just need, there we go. So we've created our reducer function, but now we need to just go through, and we're now going to change to calling state instead of that. Now let's have a look at that and see what's happened. That's really, so at the moment, why isn't that not working? Well, let's if we have a look at our console here, we can see that we're clicking. Oh, we've just seen another error there. So we might tr Yeah, that'll do us. All right, it's another error. Get rid of that, which is good. Now we're clicking, but there's nothing happening, so there's a good reason for that. So now what we need to do is we need to come here and we say we want to dispatch an action, and the action is an object, so we want the type of the action to be toggle. And I think I remember it was field name, so it's heading field. So now let's see if that's given us what we need to reload. And see, now it's doing something that's very annoying. It's toggling, but then it's immediately jumping back to the other way. Now this will drive you nuts with until you figure this out and you understand what Inertia is doing. But here if we look at for the word preserve state, and it's probably, yeah, so let's do that. Well, let's just enter this preserve state option, and we're going into the link component. Just add that here, and let's see what happens once we've reloaded the page. And then we can see that Inertia preserve state, remember this, it's so important because I'm mutating the component state and it's not working, but preserve state in the link component fixes the problem. As you can see now, the direction is toggling correctly and you can see that we're actually navigating. But if you look on the history here, when we click, see it's an XHR request. So it's an XML HTTP request. It's not actually being sent as a normal HTTP request. So we've got our headings now working. Now let's work to now create our shipment rows, our table rows. So let's go, not new folder, let's create a new file. Rows. Now we can do a row. Let's do it like that, so it's here. So what we want to do, so we currently aren't pulling in any properties from Inertia, so let's do that. So we've got shipments coming through. You can tell we've got shipments coming through. The variables are available here. So we've got our shipments coming through, and they're also available if we have a look at the into our root div for Inertia. We can see all the information there's available. So now we're going to reference that within our index.js component. So we're going to say here, we're going to go shipments.map, create a function, I'm going to call that shipment, and then we're going to say, okay, so what we're going to do is return a table row keyed to the shipment ID, and pull in the row and pass the shipment to it. So for shipments, that looks right, that's kind of right. Let's go and now do this. So what we want to do here, we've now got a bit of an issue here. We want to move this here. We might put that into a new file, table headings, and then export default Is that right? It should be okay. So we want to import table headings. Now we might call that something don't really like that. Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. That's probably, yeah. And we know, yep, good. So now we need to go into our row and import our headings. And it's going to be a export default. I'm going to take in a shipment, and we're going to do a headings.map, and the function is heading. And what we want to do is we want to return table data with a key of, well, we might make this a little bit more unique. We'll say heading dot field and then dash, and we'll go shipment dot ID. That'll do. And then yep, so then we want to say we want to return all this. So we want to return, what do we want to return? We want to go shipment and heading dot field. Maybe that's going to work. Are we calling that properly? Yep, let's try it. And it's blown up, so we can now, row is not defined. Okay, so we now need to pull in row, import row. Maybe that will do the job. And I bet we've not got a return statement. Yep, so we need to return our headings. Double loop. All right, so now we've got our sorting working, and as you can see, our headings are working fine as well. So what do we further need to do now to make this work? Well, we've still got something else that's not being done yet, and we could do it a number of different ways, but let's have a look at some action buttons. Now, one thing we find is we've got routing in the we've got this idea in Inertia of we need to generate URLs for named routes, and within Laravel you might use Ziggy, but you've also got this ability to send an Inertia response with URLs. So let's have a look at how you might do that in CakePHP. So we can generate things from CakePHP side and pass them through. So let's do that now. Let's generate some things to use as routes. So we're going to say, okay, for this controller, I want to send a route for the index, for the delete, for the view, maybe add, if you get that far, and you'd even want one for edit. And I'm going to create some routes by going through our actions, so for each action, as that should be plural, right? So our actions are these, and we want to create a root named action, and we want to use the CakePHP router, and I keep forgetting the name of this, so I'm just going to scroll up until I see it. Path URL. That's what we want. So basically, if you look at the root path examples here, you can see what it's asking for. So what we can do, we can say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to generate some, so we've got a model here which we're using is the shipments model, so I'm going to get the alias of that model, and then I'm also going to, okay, so what we've done there is we've generated a bunch of routes to pass through to, and we can now have a look at those. Let's have a look at them in the, sorry, go back to our layout. Instead of taking in shipments, let's take in routes, and let's have a look at and see what we've got as far as routes available to us in the front end here. So we can pass from the back end all the necessary routes that we'd want to. We generate them dynamically. We could even use named routes or whatever we'd like, but pass them through to the front for usage. Now, just so that I'm not doing everything, we don't need index. Let's get rid of, let's implement two. We'll just implement view and delete, and we now need to create a, let's create a component called actions, and export default, and it's and we want to return, we'll take our routes here, and we want to return routes dot, no, I want to loop through, that's an object, isn't it? So object dot keys for the routes, and then we want to map through that, then we want to go the route, and we want to return a link component, and we might not just do that. Let's return, let's do this really manually. So route, so the first one we want is a link, and the href will be, what did we say? It was going to be routes, and it was delete. This one is as a button, and what else do we need? Oh yeah, we also want some class names, don't we? So let's do class names. So we want it to be a button, button small, button danger because it's delete, and let's put in a class to give it an icon to, hopefully. And I want to call this, now we're going to do this very manually, so we're just going to type in delete. And then I'm going to create another one called button info. It's going to be a view, and it's view. And it's not going to be a button, it will just be a link. And call that view. Now, is that what we need? Let's look at that. So we've now got some actions. Now, where do we want to put that? So we've got, so we need at the end of the row. So let's go here. For each return. Okay, so we'll go let TDs equals that, and then what else do we need? TDs dot push something else onto it. What are we going to push on? I'm going to push on another TD, and this one's going to have a key of heading. No, we don't need to call that one actions. Oh no, so it'll still be heading. I feel like I got that wrong. Let's just change that, go back to oh yeah, so feel like that there might be an issue with, let's have a look at headings here, title headings. Okay, so if there's a no sort, that we might need to go here, row. So what we're looking for here, we might need to do a filter, and function is heading, and this is from there. Once you've filtered it, we're going to return heading dot sort. So return any headings, but don't. Maybe that's right. That shouldn't have blown up, I hope. Yes. So now we need to put a final TD's push, and we want to push onto that table data and action and shipment.id If I done that, something funny with that. So row action it's all very Okay, so we want actions so I've made probably a fatal error there. No, I haven't. It's all good. Shipment. And that will allow shipment, because we definitely need that, because we need from here, so we go like this, and we want to there to be shipment.id, and the same, very similar here, view. Okay, so apparently now it's probably going to blow up horribly. Let's check all the things I did wrong. Reading delete. Alright, and before we do that, we need to roots equals roots and take in roots here. Alright, so that might work. We'll be very lucky if it does. Actions 10, 30, 10. Okay, what's it complaining about? It's saying 10. So let's go actions. Alright, I'm just going to console log the roots and reload, and we are absolutely not seeing any roots coming through to our actions. And maybe we can change this. Let's now change this. We don't want this like this. Let's use our const. We want shipment, and we want roots, and we want views page and props. Let's see if that works. Maybe that's what we need to do. Cannot read properties of undefined shipper. Row 1422. Let's have a look. That's not going to work because let's take that from there. Maybe we get confused ourselves, but anyway. Okay, so now we've got a delete button and a view button. Let's have a look at firstly our actions. We want to make sure margin end 2. Let's see if that makes it look better. Right, so now we have some buttons and they don't go anywhere, but let's get those buttons working so we can move on. So it's saying here method not allowed, so that's obviously just something we can do to change. We can say, okay, don't do a post, do a, right, let's try again. And now it's saying CSRF token from the request did not match or is missing. Okay, so now we have an issue. If we have a look at our inspect, we've got to, and we hit delete, we go to the network tab, hit delete, you can see that basically it's forbidden. There's something wrong, we're getting an error message. So we now need to pass through some headers. Now how do we do that? Well, in the link component provided by Inertia, we need to create an object, and we want to specify CSRF token. And now, where do we find a token from? Well, let's go back to our elements here and go right up to the top here, and notice here that we have in our props a CSRF token. So we can come here into our actions here. We might go back to where that's specified. Is it row actions? Yeah, well, we might do it here. We can go use, and we go CSRF token, and hopefully, if I've spelt that right, that CSRF token will, if we reload, we've now got some other problems. Use page is not defined, didn't pull it in. So let's go use page from Inertia and reload. Now let's hit delete and see. So it's still erroring out. Let's have a look at our, just hit delete again. Okay, it's saying record not found. Let's reload and make sure we've got some fresh records. And hit delete. Now what happened there? Found, okay. Now what's happening there? It's So basically at the moment I'm sending a delete method to our shipments controller, but I actually want to send this delete method to our dispatch controller. So let's make a change to our code. So how about we don't do this? We'll go this get name of the controller, and let's see if we can redirect. Yeah, that's better. Right, so now we're passing it back to our controller, and we just want to go in now and make some nice changes. We're still going to be using the shipments model. We're going to go into change. We're going to put this here, and we're going to change any reference to this dot dispatch to model, and I want to call that shipment, because it is a shipment, and and we want, we're not going to implement add and edit, but we will be implementing delete. So let's implement delete. and we want to change that to shipment, and yeah, alright, so now reload, and it appears now it's reloading, but it should be telling us about it. Notice in a response here that we have a flash in the props. We've got a flash element. So let's implement a very let's implement this flash, and all we're going to do, export default, is we're going to take a prop. No, we're going to take flash prop and say if flash.message, so if there's something in the message, return, and we don't need to make this that, otherwise return, just don't render anything. Alright, so now we're going to place that somewhere. We can put it in our layout, we can put it anywhere. Let's put it above here. So we want to say flash, and what do we want? We want to pass flash to it if there's a flash message. So maybe do that and use the props again to take that in, and now let's see what we get. Okay, so now we can see that we've got our delete method working. Obviously you'd want that to be something prettier than that. Let's do a view. So when we're doing view, let's have a look at what we need for the view. We've got add view. We just need to pass the ID, but if we were going to create, we could create a fancy view, but we don't necessarily need to. Let's go here and create a new file and call it view.js, and export default, take shipment, and all we need for the view is the shipment's already being passed in, so let's return and just show the shipment and null and 2. So maybe that'll work. We'll have a look. Reload, of course. What's happened there? Okay, it's passing stuff to us, but it's not navigating. Why is that? So view. View. It's definitely doing it. Let's maybe we need right, so we've got a coding error, of course, and you probably all saw that already, but anyway. Alright, so now we have that's a pretend view, but we're just echoing the data from the database to it. We've got working here, and we can do things like just so that we know that it's actually happening. You can see the nice way things work. If we do this and just put in shipment and the shipper number, we'll call sure it's the shipment, and put this in here and do the same. And we'd do the same thing here. Maybe let's just put that on its, yeah, that's a bit better. Alright, so now we can see that if we delete something, it gives us our flash message. So we've made that available in the layout, not necessarily the place where we can put it wherever we'd like, but we can put it in the layout as well. So we've done roots, we've looked at that. Now let's go to this ability. So if we type in limit equals 3, or limit equals 3, we can see that that's something that we definitely want to have. So let's implement a quantities per page control. So we go here, new file, quantity per page, JS, and we can start with this one. We have a lot of different things we can do. We can make the rendering. Let's go export default. Now I don't know if I'm doing the correct export component. Let's paging. Alright, so let's, okay, so we're going to make this, if the component does not equal dispatch index, just return nothing. Now we want to figure out grab the URL search parameters, so window.location.search, and maybe yeah, if there's already a limit, give us that, and if we want to say whatever it's currently paging at, so at the moment it's paging at 3 per page, we want to pull that in. Now we currently haven't gotten the paging options available, but let's just complete this while we're doing it. Let's say we want 5, 10, 15, that's 5, 20, 50, 100. Okay, so there's our options. Now we might want to, so we want to show these options. This is how many pages we want to be able to flip between, and we might, and this selected is basically going to see how much going to be available selected in the view. So if you pass in something, it will use it. Otherwise, it will set the default to that. Now we want to check. And here we are. If we want to say in this list, if whatever is selected by either the paging or by being passed in doesn't exist in that list, push that into the list and sort the list smallest to largest. That's a good start. Now we want to return. So what are we going to render? We want a div with a class name of column auto, and inside the div we want a select control, and that select control, whenever it changes, we want to handle the change. So, and if this has got, we want to set a default value to whatever's generally passed in, and this, what we're making is a select control, and we want it to be a small one. Now from there, we need to render our options. And I'm going to use and we want to return an option with a key, which is always this index, and the value is going to be index, and we also want, okay, and then we're ending our select there, and that should be good. So at the moment we haven't really got everything working. We need to make a handle change method. Handle change, pass in the event. Now what we want to do from there is we want to want to delete. So we want to take from here, we want to take the let's get the search parameters here, the selected oh, that's changing, that's changing type, isn't it? So we don't want that. So maybe const so let's get the URL. Let's make a new URL, grab the window location, grab the full href, and then what we want to do with the search param is want to delete if there's any page, so we want to delete from here any page value, because as soon as you change the paging it'll be wrong. And then we want to, in our search parameters, set our limit to whatever is selected in the select e.target.value, and then finally we're going to use now a Inertia.js method. So we're going to go import router, oops, that's it, from Inertia.js, and we want to say router.get and pass it to the URL and convert that to a string to go and grab it. Now let's see how well we've done. So quantity per page, we need to go into our layout. Let's put it into our layout, and we're doing a test. So let's do this. I'm going to put quantity per page here, and we said we were going to give it the component, and what was the other thing that we were going to pass through? I'm going to close a few of these. The other thing we needed was paging. So we haven't got that yet, so that's going to be a bit of a challenge. So let's just finish this first. Okay, so we want component, and paging equals paging. And so that's going to fail miserably in a minute, but we'll get there. So let's reload and it'll blow up spectacularly. Find out what we're missing. Component is not defined, of course it isn't. So we want quantity per page. I want to go into layout, and we're pulling in there. Now here's another interesting thing. To get the component, we need to do const component equals, and it's not part of the there, so we want component. Now we're going to fail with paging's not defined. So that's our next thing that we need to pass through from our CakePHP end to our front end. So going back to our index view, we've got this pagination happening here, and we need to pass paging through to our Inertia component. So to do that, we go this request get attribute, and it's paging, and we want to say paging equals that, and oh, we still haven't done everything there. We just might want to put that into here. Now that paging is incredibly valuable, but apparently this set paging get attribute okay, what are we missing? Layout 19. Let's have a look at layout. Alright, we've made a mistake there. We need to pop that through. So now we've got here being provided to the if we have a look here, we can see that we've got a paging setting here. There it is. So we can see we've got paging settings. Now right at this moment it seems like we've got paging is being nested in the shipment. So I just want to change that as well, going back to here. So we're going to just grab model, and the paging is being done is get alias. So we now fix that up. Right, we might make paging available in the layout so we can see it. That might be good. So we'll just call paging. We might leave that, go roots, and we might change that to paging, and paging. Now it might be better to have that right up the top as well, otherwise it'll go off the bottom of the page. Right, let's have a look. Okay, so this is what's being passed through to these paging statistics are being passed through from CakePHP to the front end whenever we page a view. So at the moment we've got a limit of 3. Let's change that. We've now navigated to have a limit of 50, and as you can see we now have per page equals 50. So it's one of the features that you'd really want to have is this ability to do page limits. Now you can see that this quantity per page thing is using the Inertia.js router, that makes everything inertia enables. What does that mean in practice? Well, if we have a look at our network tab and I change this and do an inertia request and have a look at the request, you can see the headers. Firstly, it's doing it, if we look in our request headers, it's a request with XHR, and then this identifies it as an inertia request, X inertia true, and that lets the back end know that it's an inertia request. And because it's an XHR with inertia, it will respond with a JSON view, not HTML. And so that gives you the data being passed back, and so it's not re-rendering the whole view, it's just re-rendering what it needs to as it passes the data back. So yeah, really useful to know how to identify an inertia request. It's that header there. So where have we gotten to? Where we've got page limits in place. We've got the ability here, let's say we change the page limits manually to something different. We can see that we're adding in that if it's something that's not in this list, it gets added in. And we've got the ability to delete or view a shipment. Now what we want to do is to do something that makes me have fear and loathing, which is pagination. So we've passed through from the dispatch controller index view the paging, and we'd like to do, if we have a look at our example here, we'd like to do pagination statistics and then pagination. So let's start with this stats first. So we go here and we go into our components. I'm going to create pagination stats, and we clearly are going to need, coming through here, we're going to need paging, and then we have a template is this here, and then we want to return, let's just return a paragraph and the template fixed up. Now we know that we've got some tokens that we need to replace here, so we can go in here just for the time being. Maybe it's worth copying these in here. So page is, okay, so we might go in here, we go const, and we want to take page, and we'll per page, count, we definitely want total, and we want page count. What else? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's got it all. So we've got everything there. So now we need to go through and we might just go through and paste everything in. So page of page count showing per page out of count. Now, does that do everything? We hope it does. So now we've implemented pagination stats. Let's see if that works. So we need to go into our index file here, and underneath our table, we've just got to wrap this in a fragment because it won't work if we don't. and then we want pagination stats. Now I think all that we're wanting to pull in is the paging. Now does that, oh, no it doesn't, so we want to make sure that paging is available. Let's reload and see what's happening. Now let's change the pages, so let's go, yeah, so let's manually put in a page 55. Yeah, so there we can see our pagination stats are now working. The next step is we want to do pagination.